Now, a special meeting of the United Nations Security Council has condemned Russia for its continuing invasion of Ukraine and its attack on a nuclear power plant. We're now joined by Mick, a retired military general in the Australian Army. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. I want to first draw your attention to this Russian air attack on one of Europe's largest nuclear power plants. Now, while the plant managed to escape this huge disaster, do you think it would have been a deliberate hit by the Russian forces? Was this a message that was being sent out, or was it a mistake?
I'd say the Russian political leadership may not have liked this, but you never know when things get out of control on the ground in a war. These things happen. Obviously, under international law, targeting these kind of things are not allowed. And I would say this is a Russian military commander on the ground who's doing his own thing.
Well, that's a little bit concerning, isn't it? Is there a possibility that what's happening on the ground is not being communicated to the political leaders, and there's a break in communication there?
I think we've seen that all the way from the very beginning of this. The strategy that emerged from Putin of Ukraine as a non-state and of the rapid victory has failed to manifest in the first 24 hours. The Russians are playing catch-up on the ground. Military commanders are playing things, fast and loose with their tactics. They haven't demonstrated great military competence so far. They've led their soldiers poorly. They didn't even tell many of their soldiers that this was a real war they were going into, that it was a training operation. So we shouldn't be surprised that we're seeing rogue military leaders from the Russian military.
Yeah, we're going into the second week of this conflict, and Vladimir Putin at the start, I suppose, had hoped that this would be a short, sharp war. He says that the Russian strategy is going to plan. You say it is not. We are seeing the Russian forces not succeeding as much coming in through the north and the east, but a little bit more success through the south, through Crimea. Why is that?
Well, I think that it's a more open form of warfare in the south. There aren't as many large cities down there. But also, the mass of the Ukrainian defenders are in the east and in the north. So the Russians aren't having as much resistance against the very stout and courageous Ukrainian military and civilians they're coming up against in the north and the east. The Russians have been successful in the south. They've created a land bridge from Russia all the way through to Crimea, and they're well on their way of extending that to Odessa in the coming days.
Ukrainian President Zelensky is pleading for NATO to implement a no-fly zone over his country, and that would help protect much of the infrastructure in Ukraine. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg has refused that request. Why not?
Well, a no-fly zone isn't a passive thing, it's a very active thing. A no-fly zone has to be enforced. It means NATO would have to dedicate aircraft and other resources, potentially to shoot down Russian aircraft and conduct bombing missions against Russian air defence systems on the ground in the Ukraine. NATO and the United States have been clear about not having boots on the ground or committing combat forces so far, so that would be why we're seeing that posture from NATO at this point in time.
We are now seeing Europe send weapons through to Ukraine, and we're seeing civilians taking up these weapons and arming themselves as well. Talk to me about this combination. We've got civilians being armed, and we've got Russian troops that are not disciplined, that are, as you say, playing fast and loose on the ground. What sort of a combination is that going to be?
Well, this all tracks back to the Russian military not understanding what it's in the Ukraine for. I mean, the Ukrainian defenders know exactly what they are doing and why they're doing, and they're fighting for the sovereignty of the country and protect their freedom and democracy. I think Russian military leaderships are unclear exactly why they're there. I'd say there were lots of different objectives they're going for, but because there is no unity of purpose, they're having a lot of trouble really focusing and prioritising their military operations.
Just very quickly, before we lose you, there is a possibility that, Russian President Vladimir Putin has brought up the possibility of a nuclear warfare. What do you think of that? How possible is that?
Well, she can never discount it. We shouldn't overreact. The Russians have form in referring to their nuclear capability as part of their conventional operations. They've done it in the past. They've written about it in their normal military doctrine. It's actually not unusual for the Russians to at least refer to nuclear capability when they talk about regional wars. So we shouldn't discount it, but it's very, very low probability, and we shouldn't overreact to Putin's hysterics about nuclear warfare.
All right, retired military general Mick Ryan there. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.